Let's go, folks. Time for the Gibby Show.
How you doing, baseball fans? Welcome to another edition of the Gibby Show, your weekly podcast covering the game we love and also the game that can break your heart. Major League Baseball, we're here with one of the game's iconic baseball managers, upcoming author, the former two-time manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, baseball lifer. Direct, not from San Antonio this week, but he's on the road out there searching for wild buffalo. Talking about talking about Gibby, Mr. John Gibbons. John, how are you today?
Johnny, I'm doing good. My wife's a big photographer, so we're out here checking out Yellowstone and places like that. And I've been keeping up with baseball. It's tough series, for the old Blue Jays, and sometimes things are hard to explain. But
yeah, it is. It's the game. You always talk about the baseball gods, and this past weekend, and this show is going to be a tough one. We got thousands of people who listen to you each and every week. The playoffs, obviously an exciting time. Everyone waits all season for it. But this one came and went pretty quickly. Sad one for the Blue Jays Nation, with the Jays being swept this weekend at the Rogers Center by the Seattle Mariners, who go on to the AL Division Championship Series. For me personally, heartbreaking to watch both the Blue Jays lose and my Mets fail in another historic fashion against the San Diego Padres 2-1. We're going to cover it all here today with Gibby. In our Gabbing with Gibby segment, we got another good one. John will talk to Jays catcher Danny Jansen about the season and the abrupt way it ended. That will be a great segment. And, of course, we have your viewpoints as well in the Ask Gibby segment of the show. Today, we're going to devote the entire episode really to this past weekend and any future speculation about free agents, who should stay, who should go, trades, and all those questions will be top of mind after the playoffs are over and will be covered by future episodes. That's the one thing about baseball fans, as you know, John. Once the season ends, then it starts the hot stove, and people can't get enough baseball, so I'm happy to be here each and every week with you. And today we'll go over the sad stuff, and then hope springs eternal for spring, and then we'll talk about what's going to happen and what will happen in 2023, hopefully. First, let's go to the leadoff, John. I mean, there's only one story here for the listeners of this podcast and fans of yours, and that's the weekend loss and the end of the season for the Blue Jays. I mean, heartbreaking, man.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously a big Blue Jays fan, and I spent a number of years up there, and the way it happened. I mean, that doesn't happen in baseball. I mean, it's very rare, especially obviously in the postseason, and being in that manager's seat. You think everything's rolling along. After getting beat the first game, you go in the second. Obviously, got to win that game. You win this, now we're in good shape. We like the way everything sets up, and you got a nice commanding lead. The offense has come to life, and the pitching's been very good, and then some crazy things happen, and you don't really. Sometimes this is one of those things it's hard to explain, to be honest with you. Yeah. But they question things, they second guess a lot of things you do, and I've been on that manager's chair many times and had, been second guessed. I mean, that's part of it.
There's always a lot of speculation. I mean, there always is. But, I mean, the ugly facts, really, and this is really, when you're looking back at historic losses in playoff history in Major League Baseball, the Jays having an 8-1 lead heading into the fifth inning at home, it should have been a slam dunk. But in historical fashion, this was the largest comeback win by a road team in Major League postseason history. It was the largest comeback win by a road team in an MLB postseason game in history by a team on the road attempting to win a playoff series. And it was also tied for the second largest comeback win in a postseason in MLB history. The last time that happened was in 1929 in the World Series when the Philadelphia Athletics beat the Chicago Cubs when they came back from a 7-run deficit. I mean, how does a franchise come back from this type of collapse?
Well, John, you know what? In the long run, they'll be fine. I think it's just so much anticipation, and they know they got a good team, right? And the players know they got a good team, and everything's, they had a tremendous September. Everything's rolling. Everything's looking good. You get the home field advantage, and then you suffer the eliminating loss like that, right? And everybody's scratching their head, probably doing more than that. But it's like life. It's still the entertainment world. You move on. And that's kind of the beauty of sports, right? But you go through your ups and downs, and in players as professional athletes, they learn to do that. It's they're failing all the time. But in the meantime, you can't get away from it. It's suffocating. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants, this guy's head, that guy head. Get rid of this guy. Get rid of this guy. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. And so you know that as a player, as a coach, and accept, hey, that's part of it, and put your flak jacket on, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I tell you, an interesting quote from Jay's interim manager, John Snyder. He said, "The postseason is great, and the postseason sucks. Because at some point, if you're not the last team standing, you're going to have to rip a Band-Aid off, and your season is over." Now, you've gone through this, 2015, 2016. Is that how it feels? It's like you're all of a sudden the Band-Aid gets ripped off, and it's like it's over. And you don't want it to be over because it's like you work so hard to get where you are, and then in a flash, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what? Well, I've never been in that situation where you're in the driver's seat, right? The series we lost, against Kansas City, they Kansas City outplayed us in enough, or not every game, but enough to win it, right? And then of course, Cleveland, same type thing. They just outplayed us, they outpitched us, or they outhit us, whatever. So I can't say that I experienced what happened to the Blue Jays, but I was with the '86 Mets.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we were on the opposite side, right? But I can only imagine what the Red Sox went through. You got historically that's what happened to the Red Sox. The worst part of that was the World Series. That wasn't a wild card round, But there's
Game 6, the ball through Buckner's legs, all of that. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's pretty much in this game. I mean, when you have a lead, and the bullpen had given up a few runs, and it's 9-6, and all of a sudden, I mean, there's I guess you call it a Texas leaguer, a bloop, a dying quail, and it caused this incredible turnaround that basically broke the hearts of millions of Blue Jays fans. It was just a horrific way to switch that momentum. Now, we're happy that Springer didn't get hurt, but here's a ball that there was nothing anyone can do. Watching it over and over again, it was going to fall in. So, how do you you say the baseball gods again. I mean, how do you even explain anything like that? To just kind of a 9-6 game and boom, it's tied, bases loaded, and a potential serious injury to one of those guys.
Yeah, you can't explain, Johnny, but it was a perfectly placed ball, right? You couldn't have gone out there and just stood there and dropped it any better than that. Yeah. And they're going all out trying to catch it because of the importance of the game. Even the week before there was a similar play that in that same kind of ball, and Bo's going out there, and people were saying Springer should catch it, and or what have you. Or people didn't understand that play is not being made, right? So to see it almost twice in 2 weeks, I'm going, baseball gods, right? But really, there's nothing you can do about that. And then, plus, you got the the bouncy turf there in Toronto.
You don't know how high that ball is going to bounce. Could it go over Springer's head?
Yeah, and those guys are on the move, and you got guys on the base that can run. That always helps. Next thing you're looking at they're scoring all three. So So you know what? It's not something you place blame on anything. It's just one of those things that's perfect. It's not like somebody booted a ball, went through their wickets like Bill Buckner. No, just perfectly placed ball, and nothing you can do about it. And the sunshine was shining on the Mariners' ass. That's what
Yeah, and it sucked the
even inside the dome, the sun was shining on their
it
ass.
was. I mean, but it sucked the life out of the crowd there. That was, hoping like this is going to be it. We're going to have a game three, and then the Mariners take the lead, and then it's over. I mean, it's just horrible to, as a Jays fans, it's horrible for them. I mean, because it's over now, and so now
They'll
that.
get over it, though, Johnny. They'll get over it. You know, they got
Yeah,
some of the best.
but
Yeah.
I could relate as a Mets fan because the Mets this season won 101 games.
Oh
They
yeah.
break your heart in a different way every year. Scherzer, spit the bit. He's the guy that they brought in at 40 million bucks a year. And between the series in Atlanta and the series that was just completed against the Padres, it was just another way to break your heart, and that's what the Mets have done to me since 1966, in a way. But we're here to talk about the Jays. Obviously, my mourning over the Mets loss is going to continue on until I hit this Port St. Lucie in March. So
But that's what keeps you going, man.
it
That's what drives
does,
you.
man, and
You know,
it
if you
does.
freaking won every year, you wouldn't. I always say this too, because my parents are both from Boston,
Yeah.
right? I always say, and you know how New Englanders are. I would say the worst thing that ever happened to the Red Sox is they won it. Now the Bostonians have nothing to bitch about.
Right, that's true. That's true. Hey,
You
listen,
know,
the Cubs went through 100 years without winning. And I mean, it happens. But the way the franchise. But you come back as a fan, and I'm talking strictly as a fan here. You come back, and all right, it's over. You wait to another 3-4 months. Spring training's going to
oh yeah,
start. The Jays will be back. There'll be moves which we'll talk about in future weeks, and what our speculation is. But also when you talk about that game, and obviously game one was a disappointment as well. But game two, when you talk about second guessing, you talk about what would have you done because if you were the skipper, there's a lot of questions right now about taking Kevin Gausman out when Schneider did.
right.
He'd thrown 95 pitches when he was removed. Do you think that he should have stayed with him a little longer?
Well, all I'm gonna say is this: I feel for every manager in that thing and that is managing, right? They, but you're basically your whole job as a manager is running the pitching staff, handle, when to take the starter out, if you leave them in, which guys to bring in, and even nowadays it's so much different because the analytics is so prevalent that they managers, I don't know how John works with the front office, but I know they're heavy analytics. And so whether that's dictating this or that, I'll tell you this, I would never second guess anybody. I always loved starters. You know what? I just did, and it, and it's also tough, for a reliever to come in, I had Timmy, I had Timmy Mesa when he was just breaking the big leagues.
Yeah.
And there's not a better kid, but it's tough coming in there too with bases drunk, right?
Right. I mean,
And-
what if he hadn't faced Santana? What if Mesa hadn't faced Santana? That's another question people are bringing up.
All we know is we will never know. We will never know. That's
never
kind of the
know.
beauty of baseball. We can guess. We can second
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah,
But
there's a
all
lot
we
of
did
that
was-
going on right now. I mean, what if Romano had been asked, to get 6 outs?
Yeah, I mean, you never know, but you know what? That's I've been in that seat. You're
have.
vulnerable to that. That's part of it, and if you got to be able to take that, man, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in the wrong profession, and sometimes you got to tell people that you don't like what they're saying to stick it, whatever.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, if as long as you're prepared and you have a reason for doing something, it may not be the right reason necessarily from the outcome, but if you're prepared and you stick by it and you defend it, right? But the beauty of baseball is we all do things differently. There's so many different ways to do things. I do things different than Snyder did. He does than what you did, and what damn near every fan out there with. There's definitely some obvious things in baseball, but that's the beauty of of
Yeah,
baseball.
yeah. I
One of
mean,
the few.
unless you're in that dugout, unless you're in that skipper's seat, I mean, no one knows what you're going through and what those decisions, you think what you should do in this situation, what you should do in that situation, and there's also been a lot of speculation that Jose Barrios didn't throw one pitch in the playoffs. 19 million a year. For this year, 6 more years. Money really doesn't have nothing to do with it, but he didn't throw a pitch in the playoffs. Any comments on do you think he should have been brought in at all?
No, I don't know where they would have used him.
Yeah,
Especially since he's a starter.
yeah, yeah.
They have their bullpen guys that have been very. You can't forget too. These guys have been really good in September.
They were.
The team they was swinging the pitching staff and the relievers. If they've been struggling, okay, you might have some more questions, but. I can remember though sitting, going to my first playoff. It was my first playoff as a manager, and being in that dugout, or even the day before, or or before the game starts, and it does enter your mind. I got to make the right moves here. This game is getting scrutinized. Everybody and their brothers watching it, right?
Yeah.
This is a time. You know what? You got to be on your toes, and you say a quick little prayer and say, hey, I could use a little help here, because you want to make all the right moves, and then the team comes out on top, right? But it never fails in baseball. Your best moves, backfire sometimes, and your worst moves come out smelling like a rose. That's just the way it is. And it wouldn't be any fun if we couldn't look back and question things, right?
Yeah, well, so there's always chair quarterbacks, Monday morning quarterbacks, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
them.
that's the beauty of sports.
There's always that. But also, I have to touch upon game one for a second. Because Alek Manoah, who was on this show, a few weeks back, he gave up the home run, 3 runs in the first inning. The Jays were shut out 4-0, and for a guy like that, a young kid like that, who this means everything to him. I mean, there were reports that after the game he just sat looking at his locker in silence for at least 10 minutes. At one point, Mike Chapman came over to offer some words of encouragement, but it was clear this loss for Alek was devastating. And for what advice do you give a young kid like that as skipper, as manager, as somebody who knows this guy and the character of him and the competitiveness of him, to get over this, to turn the page on this and look forward to the future? I mean, what can you say to a guy like Alek at this point?
Well, he's hurt bad, but you know what? I think I'd say to him, hey, listen, we're not here if you're not here, right? We don't get to this point. And you know what? You earned every right to start this first game of the playoff. It's not like he's never given up runs. I mean, that's part of the game. We talk about the Mets, Scherzer. I mean, it's a difficult game. You might make a couple mistakes and they capitalize on them. But they got shut out too. I mean, so they weren't. It's tough to win when you're getting shut out.
That's true.
Their guy, Seattle's guy, was dynamite, and that's why they traded for him.
Yeah, and then once again, the life gets sucked out of the crowd. Once that crowd goes quiet.
Oh yeah.
And you talk about sometimes it's easy to play a playoff game on the road because you don't have that intense pressure from the media, the fans, the beat writers, all of that. Everything has got to play into it. So
Oh yeah, I've heard that argument before, and I felt it. Sometimes not always bad being the underdog, the bad guy. You go there. Where your own fans can be. I think sometimes home players try harder at home. It may sound stupid, but I think they do.
There's a lot of pressure.
I remember. Yeah, in 15 we got first 2 games of the series. We got beat by Texas at home.
Yeah,
we were unbelievable. We probably better than these team maybe at home. Our record, I don't know. And we got beat. We got shocked. And we went down there and shocked them. So whether there's anything to it or not, I think sometimes teams like being the villain, the underdog, and they relax more on the road.
Yeah,
that's no reason not to play at home, obviously,
right.
Because there's so much benefit to that. But when we discuss all these things, it just shows you how psychological everything is. What kind of mindset you got. Even with going back to Alek, I'd take Alek any day on the mound against anybody in baseball right now. And he's in the next 10. If he gets 10 more of those, he's probably going to come out on top of that. That's just the way
You'll
it is.
learn from
But
him.
I guarantee you, as young as he is, inexperienced as he is, and look what he's accomplished already. But I guarantee he put extra pressure on himself. I guarantee he would tell you he didn't. he's kind of a revved up kind of guy. You had to have. If he didn't, he's not a human being, right? And he wanted to lift this team his first start. And he might have just hung on to a couple pitches a little long, spun him up there, and a couple big hits, right?
Yeah.
But it was a winnable game. But their guy was really, really good. And that's kind of the name of the game,
It is.
Pitching wins.
But Alex certainly has such a bright future and a great career ahead of him, and the fans love him, and he just had an outstanding season. So we look forward to 2023.
Yeah, that whole team, man. That whole team's
yeah,
good.
the team,
Obviously, they're not.
There's a good core.
They're not going to all be together. I mean,
Right.
money comes.
That's the other sad part, though. I mean, it's like every team goes through it with free agency and trades, and I guess that's why. And I want to get your perspective from this, especially from 2015 and 16, when you get eliminated in a series, and you know that the makeup of the team is going to be different. There's going to be new personalities integrated. There's going to be guys that were favorites that might not be there for monetary situations. Some guys may leave for better scenarios and go to another team in free agency. So how does that feel as a player, as a manager, as a coaching staff, where you know that this is going to be the last time you're going to be together with people that you've really grown fond of?
Yeah, it's tough because I guarantee you every team that got in the playoffs this year, and every year that happens, there's something different about that. There's special teams, usually with the makeup of the team, as teammates and all that stuff, right? Because you need a lot of that to win. It's not a necessity, let's say, but there's usually something special about that team, and you play all year to get to this point, right? So you form a bond. I won with this group or whatever, however you want to say it. And then, but you recognize, in the back of your mind, the economics of baseball, and guys move on. And, we knew at the time we were getting kind of older anyway. So that was a rebuild was on the way, right? I mean, this was pretty obvious. And then, Encarnacion, contract was up, and Batista was at the end. And like I said, we were getting older. So you knew that was happening. So, yeah, that is kind of sad. You go, well, you know what? So your thinking is, maybe we better win it now, or at least we better enjoy all this because it's going to change. That's sports now.
Yeah.
In some ways too. Even this tough loss for them, and even when a couple of our tough losses, it's almost like it's more of a unifying thing. It's it kind of draws these guys. They probably appreciate themselves a little bit more now,
Yeah, and you get them, you vow to get them next time, and you don't really lament. You got to turn the page on this pretty quickly, and, you can't dwell on the fact that this might have happened or that might have happened. You got to look forward to next year and next spring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the philosophy that you have, John. It's like, all right, you can't spend the entire winter like, what if? You got to think ahead. And I guess that's the way Blue Jays fans, that's the way the players who are going home got to look at it.
Yeah, you got to. The good thing in Toronto, the Leaf season's about to start.
Yes.
And they're so hockey obsessed up there. I've never seen anything like it. That'll be a good distraction for maybe not all of them, but for a lot of them. But they're some of the best fans in the world. You know what? They'll show up next year, and this team, it'll be a good team. And you know what? And sometimes too. You know what? I mean, not the way that they lost that second game. But experience teaches you a lot, right? And they had basically a young team, and you know what? So they'll learn from this.
Yep.
They'll move on, but the first go around for some of these guys, it's not that easy.
Yeah, that's very true. But well, John, I mean, it's going to be time now for the Gabbing with Gibby segment.
God.
So you brought another special one on. So why don't we go to this interview now that you did, this conversation with the Jays catcher Danny Jansen. So now it's time for the Gabbing with Gibby segment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Blue Jays fans, our special guest today is Danny Jansen, the catcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. One of my all-time favorites. I got to spend part of the 2018 season with him. I knew he was going to be really good. I didn't know he was going to be this good, if you want to know the truth, but we're honored to have him on here. And, it's really, really cool that he'll join us here because, he's coming off a really tough playoff loss. And the fact that he wants to join us, is pretty special. So, Danny, how you doing, pal?
Gibby, thanks, man. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What a year. Let's start. What a tremendous year for your team. Obviously didn't end the way you wanted to. One of those freak things. I've been in the game a long time. I haven't seen one like that, put it that way, but I've seen some. You can't explain them. You got any idea what happened? You can't explain it, so you're better off not even trying. But you were out there in the thick of it, and especially behind the plate, you're sitting there watching it, and but that's part of baseball sometimes.
Yeah, man, it was tough, especially that pop fly that was right in between Bo and George, and these guys are going head to head, full speed at each other. And I had the vantage point, obviously, watching the whole thing, and I'm tracking the ball. And the score was 9-6 at that time, and then these guys are going full speed, and it's kind of like one of those things where like, oh, what's going to happen here? And then luckily, both guys, all right. Obviously, George got carted off, which is terrible. And it's just these guys just going at it, 100%, want it bad. It was tough, man. It was just a wild game. It was tough, but we have a lot to be proud of.
You're darn right you do. Yeah, you know what? It's one of those perfectly placed balls. You could stand out there second base and not throw 10 of them and put in that spot because one of those guys catches it. They're all good big league players, and it's like, it's like the baseball gods, man, got pissed off at something. Who knows, But
Yeah.
You did. You know what, Danny? You guys had a tremendous year. Last year you won over 90 games. You came up one game short, right?
Yeah.
You play in the American League East. To win 90 games in that division, the best division in baseball, there's no question about it. That says a lot right there. So how do you feel about your personal season this year?
Yeah, man, it was it was start with the team thing. Like we coming into spring training, it's like you won 91 games last year to make the playoffs. Like we want to make do one game better this year. One game better, and that's exactly what we did. And then so a lot to be proud of there. And then on a personal note, it was tough again with some injuries. With the oblique on the third game of the year. Which obviously stunk, and then I got broken hand midway through in June. So it was tough. It was tough to come back, and but I'm proud of the way that I did it. It's never easy on rehab and watching your guys out there battling, and you miss all the dudes and miss traveling and being with each other in the thick and thin, and so that's always a hard thing. But coming back, I'm proud of the way that I handled it, and stayed passing the baton to the next guy, and tried to help the team win all I can.
And how many at bats did you finish with? Was it mid 200s?
220 maybe around there.
Yeah, and the numbers you put up when you add that, damn, that's pretty good. I got to be honest with you, Danny. I didn't think you were going to hit the way you're hitting now. I knew you all-star type catcher, no question about that. And you're going to be a productive hitter, but you're more than that. You're kind of what teams dream a catchy prospect turns into, right? It always used to be catching first, and then you take what offense you can get. That was kind of back when I was a player, and then it kind of flipped, and it's we want all offense. And so if you get one that's a combo, you know what? Dang, and that's just what you're doing. Hey, I like to say when I talk to people about you, oh yeah, I knew he was going to be this good, but I can't say I knew you were going to hit that well. Sorry,
Yeah, that's all good, man. I'm proud of it, man. I've always been confident that I can hit and stuff, and I think that I've always put, I've been with you in springs and stuff. I've always put, defense first, and I think I always will. I just think that's, so important in all aspects of it. But I've given myself more time to work on hitting, and over the last couple of years, I just feel like I've learned. I've just kept learning, and I feel like I'm finding out more about myself, but also, I got the confidence now of kind of what I want to do at the plate, and what my approach should be, and what are my strengths, and not kind of shying away from them. And then I just kind of I wrote with that, and it's been very freeing for me.
Yeah. Hey, do you remember I used to? Well, I don't know how many times I said it to you. I said, "Hey, Danny, man, fire one over to that right field." That guy. You remember I would tell you that?
Yeah.
I hope you remember it. Now, because you're primarily a pull hitter, right?
Yeah. That's always been a strength of mine for sure.
Well, what makes that? Jose Batista, right? Jose was on here a couple of weeks ago. When Jose got to the big leagues in Toronto, Cito gassed him. That's basically what he did. He turned into a superstar, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the one that's off base, man. I'm the one that hadn't figured it out yet, you know. So, and you know, when you as consistent as you are now in being able to pull the ball, you know, hey, good for you. But what do you think next year they're getting rid of the shift?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'll help for sure. I
You like that? Do you like some of that new rule stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I understand, like, you know, I think we were one of the highest shifting teams in baseball, and I get it. Like, there's been, you know, numerous times, obviously, where it works. You know, it definitely works.
It does.
So I know that the numbers behind it work. But as a hitting perspective now, I think that it opens up. I mean, I'm not afraid to crush a ball into the shortstop or into the 6-hole. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So maybe there'll be an opening there. So yeah, I guess we'll find out. We'll see.
And now, as far as not you're a catcher, okay, you know they're going to put the pitch clock on these guys, right?
Yeah.
Somebody had asked me about that a while back when it first came out, and I thought, you know, they will adjust, but I the only time I could see maybe be an issue late in the game when the game's on the line, and you know, some relievers they're real deliberate. They take their time because they have to. They're trying to relax, slow it down, make sure they got everything right. They make sure you guys are you and the pitcher are on the same wavelength. That's where it might be a problem. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think that obviously those like high leverage situations are always like you got to take time to breathe. You got to, you know, it's one, you know, at that point of the game, man, it's crucial, right? So it's interesting. It's very interesting. I was rehabbing, you know, one of my 2 stints this year, and I was in high A. I guess it would have been low A. I was in Dunedin rehabbing, and they had the big bases. They had all the pitch clocks, and the pitch clock didn't matter when I was hitting because I was on big league rehab, but when I was catching, you had to do it fast, you know? And I guess the good thing is now is that it takes less time, I think, with like the new pitch comm than it would with signs and like, oh, we got to step off, we got to switch signs. So that does help with this pitch clock thing, having the pitch comm, because you are able to, you know, you throw the ball back, and I don't know exactly when the time's going to start, but you throw the ball back to them and you can hit it right away, and they can like kind of shake. They don't have to be on the mound, and they can like shake no, yes. You know what I mean? So I'm sure there's going to be ways to, I don't know, go around it or whatever, or try to speed it up. Yeah. But one thing with the pitch comm is they don't have to be on the mound looking at your fingers. You can just fire away kind of early. So that's one thing that's going to help.
You know, but you get some superstar reliever. Hell, Romano now, man. Hey, yeah. Man, he's turning into a star. You know, what
yeah, he sure is.
But you know, you get some veterans been around. I don't know who those guys are out there, but he gets a little pissed off, you know, and then you know all hell breaks loose. But
it's going to be eye opening.
Yeah, you know what, Danny? I always thought, you know what, because I think the whole idea behind all this stuff is right to speed up the games, right? Am I wrong? You know, that's kind of the
yeah.
I think that's the whole idea. So my thought is, well, if you're bored at the game, leave. Or turn the TV off, because if it's a good, entertaining game, you know, because people hang around for those 12, 10 games, right? Because they love offense. That doesn't bother them. It's a slow moving game. If you don't like it, go home, man, because it's probably not a good game anyway if it's dragging. You know, who knows? So
yeah,
we'll see. Sure. You got to be able to change.
Yeah, I know that obviously, you know, it was a playoff game and all that stuff, like the last game we played. But I mean, that game was long and it was, you know, sure as hell was entertaining. You know, so that's one of those things, you know. But yeah, we're gonna find out, man. It's obviously there's some stuff that's changed over the last couple of years, so I'm just gonna adapt to it.
Right. Yeah. Hey, you know, you mentioned the playoff game. How emotional draining are those things? Huh? You know, stressing a regular season game. I mean, explain that to these fans out there.
It's wild. It's you know, it's different. It's so cool though. I remember hearing, and you've been there, and hearing about it, you know, and some of the guys, you know, like Drop and Pete talking about it, you know, what it's like, and you know, how loud it is. And that first game, you know, through everything, you know, the national anthems, hearing everybody sing "Oh Canada" and all these cool things, you know, what we've heard about was definitely it, man. It was cool. It was an awesome time, and then. Yeah, they feel like, you know, definitely emotionally draining, but that's why we play the game, is to be in those situations and to be at home and play in front of our home fans. I mean, it was great.
Oh, I think that place shakes, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's why they're talking about doing all these new renovations, man. They've just been so loud there in the last few years, man. It's like the concrete's cracking or something.
It's cracking. They got to change it probably.
Oh heck, man. Well, all right. Well, how the teammates holding up? Everybody doing okay? It's
Yeah, yeah.
gotta be.
It was obviously tough. Well, we talked about it after the game, and guys, stayed around, and I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna stay around for a little bit. I'm just gonna talk to my guys, and it's always weird, especially like after especially a loss like that, but just after a season, as it's like, hey, this locker room's never probably going to be the same. So it's always one of those things where you just enjoy it while you can, and that was exactly what we did, man. It's a family clubhouse in there. It's very close. The guys that I've come up with and the guys that we've brought in are just awesome dudes, and yeah, that's makes it that much harder. But so yeah, it was all right. It was obviously tough. Took our time and it sucked, but after that, we got together and hung around for a little bit, and hung out.
Yeah, it's like it comes to a screeching halt. All of a sudden,
Exactly.
and you know what? Every team that gets in the playoffs are great teams. And sometimes a bad break, whatever happened, like that ball falling that perfect spot, whatever can unravel things. And but as long as you go away and got to wipe that out. You guys had a tremendous year. You got a tremendous young club that'll be good for a long time.
Yeah.
So you got to enjoy that. Fans don't always understand that all the time, because they're all about winning, and just like you guys are. But you got to be able to roll with the punches. You really do,
Right.
So
Yeah, and that was a game of punches, that's for sure.
yeah. So well, listen. So we just want to thank you for joining us. We understand you're going to be a proud papa here soon.
Yeah. Yep. By Halloween or within a couple of weeks. So, I can't wait to be a dad. Obviously, got teammates that are dads, and I always thought it was cool when they bring their little boys in or whatever into the clubhouse and all that stuff. So, me and my wife are expecting a boy, and so yeah, it's coming quick. So I can't wait. I'm excited.
You'll be a wonderful dad. But you said a minute ago, well, I called my wife and said I'm going to hang around a little bit longer. Let me tell you something. When that baby's around, don't make that call again. You better
I won't.
You better get home, man, because it's going to be. Here you go. Hey, Danny, here you go.
Yeah, super dad. It'd be a super dad after. Yeah. No, for 100%, 100%. Yeah.
Anyway,
but it's always cool.
Hey, I'm proud of you. Everybody is. The fans love you guys there. Love you especially. I've heard so many good comments about you. You've earned every bit of it, and wish you nothing but the best, pal.
Thank you, Gibby. Right. Appreciate it, man.
Have a great off season. Enjoy that baby.
Will do.
It goes fast. You'll be right back at it. Right back into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right, pal.
All right. Take care, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Every week we select a few of your questions to ask John, the Ask Gibby segment. So for future episodes, if you want to ask Gibby a question, all you got to do is send an email to askgibbyshow@gmail.com. That's askgibbyshow@gmail.com. And John, we have two varied questions here from those who wrote in, and I want to get your perspective because it's a little bit of a different question. This question comes from Julie McShay, and she says, "Hey guys, I'm absolutely loving your podcast and hearing from the fan favorites from Jay's past and present. Thank you for creating this amazing opportunity to hear you and the guys discuss your personal experiences and perspectives on some historical baseball moments. My question is about Gibby's calm disposition. How do you find the serenity to remain calm during some of the team's most stressful moments, and how would you have handled this past weekend's loss to the Seattle Mariners? You always seem so grounded, unrattled, and collected. So inspiring to see, for me to see your leadership on the team bench. Cheers from Canada, Julie."
Julie, I'm good. I'm glad Julie's got that impression, because it's funny. My mother would tell me sometimes she didn't watch many of the games, but she'd see highlights. She'd say, "John, you need to smile more. You look too serious." I said, "Mom, I'm very..." She's the same one told me my head looks too big on this podcast. So what does that take? No, outwardly, I try to remain calm. You got to remain calm, especially when you're a manager, because players look to that, right? I don't care what the 25th guy on the roster or the superstar. They want to see, they react to those kind of things. But I was churning pretty good inside too. There's no doubt about that. But I also I'd watch Davy Johnson. He was the only guy I played for in the big leagues, right? And Davy was the ultimate confidence guy, and he never overreacted, never panicked, anything like that. And that's who I wanted to be. But that's kind of my nature anyway. Because when you got your team, you believe in them. They got you there. Let's say if you're in this postseason team, you know what, you ride them. And if it ain't good enough, it ain't good enough. But if it is, and so don't panic, because you know what happens. You start panicking, point fingers, and all that. Everybody, you think, oh, he's in it for himself, right? I know that's different, maybe from what our question was about how do you remain calm. But generally, I'm a very calm person. But you might want to ask my wife that though. Maybe I just take it home or something. I don't know.
Good question. We have one more here, and this is from Mark from Toronto. It is pretty much a marketing question. All season long, the Jays had a slogan called "Next Level," and when you bring marketing into the situation with a year-long campaign of Next Level, and you have a sport coat in the dugout for when a player hits a home run, you put this gaudy little sport coat on. As a manager, what do you think about this type of marketing? Because sometimes it could backfire on the team at the end of the season. And do you get comfortable when you're seeing, a guy wearing maybe a silly hat or a sport coat like this Next Level promotion that the Jays did?
Well, you know what, Johnny, you can call me an old fart because I am approaching that time in my life, and a lot of it's how you're raised and your upbringing as far as athletics and all those things. And so I guess the answer, I'm not a big fan of any of that. All these teams are doing all of it. You go in there, some teams are ringing a bell, some guys are some teams are putting somebody in a cart. The Blue Jays doing the jacket. I didn't grow up around that. The game was it's still serious, but it seemed like there was a more serious feel for it. But they're promoting that around baseball. You got the commissioner, let the boys play, what have you. So that's part of it. I think it's trying to draw.
Well, it also is designed for merch and to sell more merchandise with that slogan on it. All I can tell you is one thing: the Mets this year for the playoffs, they came up with this phrase called "These Mets," not thinking that maybe that could backfire with a lifelong fan like me. Because all I'm saying is these Mets broke my heart. These Mets disappointed me. These Mets, forget them. So that's just kind of my take on it.
Did you buy a T-shirt that said that?
No, because I saw it and I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, what if this thing turns around? I know the Mets history. They break your heart every year. I am not going to endorse these Mets.
Yeah, I was there in '86. They didn't break your heart.
They did not. I was there too. I was there at every freaking game.
All I can say, Johnny, is what? That's the way the game is now. And it's to draw younger fans, I believe, and the fans obviously enjoy some of that. So you got to be able to adjust to that and say, okay, whatever. Unless you're getting pounded 6-7 runs or something and you're still doing it, that's where my issue really would be. And because I'm every team's doing something now, so the old feeling of you're showing the other team up or what have you, and people think, oh, that's old, the unwritten rules, all that. No, there's something, it sounds funny when you say there's something about being a good sport too. You know what I mean? You're kicking the crap out of somebody on the other side, and you don't rub it in on them. This is a little bit different. It's not like exactly that, but that's kind of the way I was raised and brought up in sports, but enjoy it, have fun. The fans love it. The Major League Baseball really loves it, I guess, and so you deal with it. Just don't if you're down a bunch of runs, maybe teams shouldn't celebrate so much. I don't know.
Go. Good answer, John.
Maybe we should just all pout like you are over the Mets loss. You just
please. I'm going to be in mourning for a while, so it's going to take me a while to get over this, as it does every year, and then I'm okay. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up. It was a heartbreaking weekend, no doubt about it. But now we have to look forward. And I know that this week for you is going to be another week in the wilderness, so you're going to be able to, breathe the fresh air, look at the buffalo, and have a great time. And we want you to have a wonderful time on your continued sabbatical until we get back to it here on the show next week. So have a good time.
Hey, Johnny, it's funny that last question you asked me about, what I thought about this and that or whatever, the celebrating and all that. Now that I'm out here in the West, maybe I was meant to be out and live in this day and time, where you just, you just
Buffalo Gibby. Buffalo Gibby.
Right, Hey, but I guarantee you one thing: the Blue Jays have a great young team. They'll be back. You got to deal with it. The ups and downs, and you know what? And if they win it all next year, it'll be that much sweeter. So keep the faith. Keep the
Keep the
faith
faith.
out there.
There you go. All right, everybody,
All right.
that's going to wrap up this edition of the Gibby Show. For John Gibbons, my name is John Arezzi. We'll talk more baseball with you right here next week.